What's up, Pandudes? Peter Von Panda here. Hey, I want to show you my 2015 GMC Terrain. This is the base Terrain, and this is not going to be a full-on tour everything review. There were some questions about specifics about the Terrain, which I've put up some videos, but I thought I would address very simply the things that I like and the things that I dislike that were surprising to me. So you can certainly find reviews on the Terrain from a lot of places. They'll go over the features, and many of them are standard GM features, but I just want to kind of go through and show you the things that I was surprised about. So first of all, this is absolutely the base model Terrain. It comes in the metallic gray, and I really actually went and bought the cheapest Terrain I could, and I think the color is great. I actually went to check out the Buick Encore, and it was a little smaller, but the price was much higher, so can't get as good of a deal on it. And the Jeep Renegade, which now I have seen on the road, was not out at the time, so I kind of beat the Jeep Renegade to the market by about 60 days. So notice got a scratch there already. So anyway, I've had this car about 90 days. I bought it right at the end of the year, and if the Jeep Renegade had been out at that time, I would be reviewing a Jeep Renegade, period. I just like the design, but it wasn't out yet. So first thing, let's talk about the alloy wheels. You know, that's a nice feature, you know, at the base level here. Metallic paint. You know, the nice thing about the whole design overall is that it's not distinctly different than the high-end GMC Terrains like the Denali. You wouldn't necessarily notice. They don't do plastic moldings and you know, kind of the or the unpainted plastic moldings, which kind of scream lower end. One of the problems with the design, even though it's overall pretty nice, is that in the middle of the hood there's this recessed kind of reverse speed hump, and what I've noticed is that when the car sits out in the rain, it ends up collecting water. So not a big deal, but you know, don't be surprised to find some water sitting on the hood of the car because it has nowhere to drain to. The first thing that I was actually really surprised about this, especially when you're in the crossover space with car-based trucks, is the back room on this. And this is kind of a huge benefit if you are driving people around. I have front driver's seat set up right now where I would sit in it. I'm about 5'7.5", and in the back is just an immense amount of legroom. I mean, I'm stunned. You know, most of the time, if you were to get in an Audi A4 or a Mercedes CLA, your toes would be right under the seat, and you would have no space to move them. But this would actually be a great car to road trip in, much better than the Encore and almost every other car. So this seat would absolutely be comfortable, and this is actually kind of a game changer in my opinion, because if you're going on long road trips, driving people around, guests, family, etc., I don't know that there's a car that's almost more limousine-like, that you get a nice upright seating position and nice legroom in a small package like the Terrain. Now, take a look at the passenger seat here. I've actually moved that all the way back. It is as far back on its sliding rails as I can possibly get it, and there is still a fairly monstrous a footwell for your feet. So I'm going to quick slide over there, and again, you know, in this case, obviously much less space, but nonetheless, my feet are comfortable even in this position. I have to kind of raise my toes to feel the seat so I can get comfortable. And even though the seat is right there in front of me, you know, this is probably the most comfortable back seat I've ever been in. So just wanted to kind of point that out, that I was actually incredibly surprised at the quality and the size and the room in the back seat. So a nice flat floor too, no hump for transmissions. Of course, this is only two-wheel drive and it's front-wheel drive. The next thing that I will show you that I actually like is, and the car is not particularly clean, is that the seat material is definitely more deliberately designed than a lot of seat material. It kind of has this you know, perforated design. It has a little red stitching here. There's a couple layers. The cloth, you know, this center insert here, which is solid. You know, it's all you know, fabric, but it's kind of a higher quality fabric and feels pretty nice. So I like that. And I was pleasantly surprised with, you know, how nice the seats were, especially if you're not getting leather. You'd want the seats to feel pretty nice. The other thing that I was actually surprised and like is that there is this kind of fake stitching along a lot of the dashboard pieces, so it kind of looks like a folded leather, and that carries on over to the door. So you have plastics and rubbers and whatnot, but it gives a little bit more of the impression that it's a little higher end, especially on a low end car. That is a kind of a nice feature to kind of have that. Now, let's take a quick peek here. I want to show you that, you know, the seats again in the back are nice, and that stitching on the center console, but it is not on the rear doors. So these are just kind of the standard, you know, pretty soft rubbers, but again, nothing special in the back, so it doesn't really carry over to the back. But the other thing that I do like is that even though it's not required equipment yet by the Transportation Safety Administration or the whatever motor vehicle department or anything, is that you get a rear view backup camera. So I'm going to go ahead and fire up the car here, and the cool thing is you go ahead and just drop it in reverse, and the camera comes on instantly, and it's a pretty nice wide angle. So even though they aren't government mandated yet, you know, a lot of companies are putting in those rear view cameras, and you've got it here. Now, this brings me to the crossover point where I'm going to talk about the dislikes of this car. And so let's start with that backup camera. The backup camera is nice, but there's no sonar. And in fact, in cars I've had from, you know, years past, have had that rear backup sonar detection. And in my mind, that's almost more useful, because if you're not paying attention, you still get active you know, warning from the car. The backup camera, you really have to be paying attention, and in a lot of cases I'm trying to look back too, so you're kind of splitting your attention between the two. So I would have actually liked sonar more, but I also think it's so cheap to put in sonar that I'm really surprised they didn't put that in the rear. The other thing is, if you look down here, my mats say Michelin, and I don't know if this was the dealership chinsing out on me or they took it out to clean it and never put it back, but there were no floor mats in the front or the back. And I had to go to Walmart and just buy some to protect the floors, the carpets in this car. So, you know, keep that in mind. If you're buying the very low end here, I don't know if they come with floor mats. It sure doesn't seem like it. The other thing that is kind of frustrating is, let me close the door here and open it back up. And then because it's so bright out, it's going to be hard to tell. But the overhead dome light comes on super slow. So I'm going to open the car door here. Let's take a look at that dome light, and it's just starting to get bright. So especially at night when you come to your car, it takes so long for those lights to they take as long to turn on as they do turning off there, which is kind of frustrating because there's a lot of, you can't see the car, so you're kind of always going by memory until they warm up for whatever reason. It probably would have been much better to have those LEDs. I think they must be kind of standard halogen or filament bulbs, so that's frustrating. The other thing here is, if I look at these gauges, while they don't look bad, they don't look high-end. I used to drive a 1990 Pontiac Bonneville, and they had the same exact font on its instrument cluster, and I don't understand why GM seems to have held on. They must have bought the rights to that font and do not want to let it go, because while it doesn't look offensive, you know, my parents just got a, I can't even remember what it is, a Kia Optima or Hyundai Sonata or something, and those gauges are actually much more Lexus-like. You know, they're kind of black. All the numbers are kind of hidden until you start up the car, and then they all light up, and they're very bright, and it kind of looks like the needle's floating. It seems like it's very easy to put kind of cool, unique design in instrument clusters, and I don't know what the deal is here, but there is none of that. So I don't like the gauge fonts. That may be a nitpicky thing, but you know, it is what it is. So the other thing here is that in the center console is the USB port. I actually have this lightning cable connected to the USB port. It's right there on the front wall, but in my opinion, it's poorly placed. They have some channels here so you can get the cord there, put the cord in the channel, and then actually close the center console, because otherwise you can't close it, and even getting it in there sometimes is a little tough. There it closes, and now you can plug in your phone. But then you really want to put your phone either in the cup holders, or you're going to have to put it in the center console. What you really want to do, or I can tell you by nature, you want to throw it in this little cubby here. But then you have this whole cable running along the center console, interfering with drinks, your shifters, grabbing change out of my little cubby bin there. So to me, it would have made much more sense to have a USB jack in the cubby so I could plug in my phone and then throw it in there. So I don't know why, I mean, I know why they do that, but it seems like it'd be much smarter to either run it up there or to have a second USB port, or more for power, or a power outlet in there as well. They do have a 12 volt, or what used to be a cigarette lighter adapter, and so I have a plug-in car charging USB port, which I used a lot when I just want power. But then sometimes you want to integrate your iPhone to the car and you have to go through this jack in there, which is kind of annoying. So the other thing that I'll throw out there too is you can pair the phone, but it only works on the hands-free protocol. So you can take calls via the car, and actually the full call quality and the microphone pickup is great. So I have no qualms with that. But what I do have a qualm with is that they still have not put in A2DP Bluetooth streaming. So you can go up a notch in the trim level and get that. It is like $5 worth of hardware to integrate Bluetooth music streaming. So I don't understand why anyone does not do that. All right, I'm 5'7.5", 5'8"-ish. I have this seat right where I like. The phone is maybe a little forward of my head. I'm trying to pull it back here, but this is my view of the head unit. And what I complain about here is that this hood is a little too low. It should be a little higher because it kind of cuts off and kind of encroaches on my view of the very top where you have temperature and time. I can see it, but you know, if you're taller and further back, it doesn't impede as much. But I don't know why this isn't just a little either shorter or a little more lifted up. But I'd like that hood just a little higher there too. That brings me to the head unit as a whole, and I'm pretty disappointed with it. I've put up some other videos kind of ranting about it. For whatever reason, particularly when I have had my iPhone 6 Plus plugged into the Bluetooth or into the auxiliary port, the USB port, and been playing on the aux jack here, for whatever reason, something happens that the head unit will crash. The head unit's crashed at other times too, but I would say the highest correlation is when I have an iPhone plugged into it. I'm not sure what the deal is, but when that head unit crashes, you lose everything. It freezes. Nothing works. You can't listen to radio. You can't change anything. And actually, you can't even turn off the car and start it up. It literally crashes until the battery dies. And in both cases where it's crashed and I realized that it had crashed, I had to disconnect the battery to get it to restart, and then it kind of restarts from like you would expect. But I say only twice because it's crashed more than that, but I didn't realize it and couldn't figure out why the battery was draining. So I've had a number of times where the battery's draining, and I actually carry a spare one of those portable jump starters in the back because it happens so often. I was just getting used to having to always jump start the car. I've had the car 90 days and probably jump started it 4 times, and then realized that the head unit was killing it when it crashed, and then disconnected the battery twice. So I've had at least 6 crashes in 90 days. So that's pretty disappointing, considering that I have my Fiat, which I also Bluetooth stream, and I also use a cable to connect to the head unit, has never crashed. So put that in your pipe and smoke it. All right. There's also a problem where you take calls via Bluetooth, and it doesn't mute the radio for whatever, or doesn't mute the driving directions that you get through the OnStar. You get 6 months of free OnStar service. It's actually very useful, but the GPS integration isn't as good apparently as like a native dedicated GPS system. And so you're talking to someone and then it says turn right ahead, turn right now, and they're hearing all of that. So there's either no muting or there's no kind of rules in the handling of the voice traffic there, which is annoying. The other thing I'll say about the head unit in the hands-free calling is that every time the phone disconnects from the hands-free Bluetooth protocol, GM in all their cars, as far as I can tell, gives you an audible call ended, which is super annoying. It's like saying leave a message after the beep. We know how voicemail work. We know how cell phones work. Don't tell me the call's ended when I know the call's ended. That's just That's just idiocy to me, to be honest. All right, on the low end here, let me show you my key. So I'm going to turn off the car here and show you my key. You'll see that on the remote, there's a lock, unlock, and a horn. It would usually also be a remote start and a tailgate open here on some other trim levels. And on the base, it doesn't come with either of that. So first things first, you don't have a remote start, which you do get on a lot of GM cars these days, which I was a little disappointed by. And you also don't have a separate button to pop the hatch, which I thought was a little odd too. There is a handle there, so if your car's unlocked, you can press the button and pop the hatch, but this is about as basic as it comes, and maybe a little bit cheap, but I guess if you're trying to be cheap, you know, you can't be disappointed with what you get. It works, unlike the head unit, which sometimes does not. The other thing here is if you look at the shifter, you've got all your normal usual suspects: park, reverse, neutral, drive, and then manual shifting. The thing I don't like about this is that every red-blooded American normal person in America is going to start up the car and then just kind of pull this all the way back, and often you put the shifter into the manual spot, and you'll notice that it's not really shifting as quickly as it should. I would have liked to have seen this either be kind of a toggle pushed off to the side, because you almost are never going to use it. I do like having manual control, which you would do with this button on the shifter, especially if you live in the Colorado and are driving up and down mountains or inclines a lot. But in 99% of the cases, you just want to pull the shifter back and get it into drive. And when you have to always look to see if you're in drive or manual mode, that gets kind of annoying. So I'm not a real big fan of the way they place that on there. The other thing here, and I'm going to start the car up again, is this car advertises, one of the reasons I got it is because it's a crossover, is that it's supposed to get, I think, 22 city, 33 miles per gallon highway, maybe somewhere in between mixed. I have never reset this average fuel economy recorder since I bought it, so I have 2,500 plus miles on this car, and I have averaged 21.3 miles per gallon. Now, I live in the suburbs, so we don't have a lot of stop and go like in a true urban downtown environment, and you know, there is definitely mixed driving on this car between neighborhoods and highways. So I'm a little surprised that this isn't a little closer to mid-20s, to be honest, or maybe even creeping up into the higher 20s. But to be honest, considering that I thought this was 22 city, 33 highway, the fact that I'm not even getting my city mileage is pretty disappointing. Now, I guess a car this size, I can't really be too disappointed that there's you know, you're getting 20 plus miles to the gallon overall. But given how they advertise it, and I guess how the EPA must regulate or kind of give you wide latitudes to manufacturers to calculate what their mileage is, I think they need to do something about it, because this isn't even close, and I would say I'm a pretty average consumer of gasoline in this car. So, you know, if I'm getting 21.3, I think the sticker should say 18 city, 25 highway, because that would make sense to me. All right, so I'm gonna get off that. The last couple things are going to be on the other side. So I'm going to turn off this car. Let's pop the hood and take a look underneath, because what I want to show you is, now that I'm becoming an expert on having to jump start this car, I want to show you what you're going to have to learn. First of all, the good news is the hood is on a hydraulic there, so you don't need to have a prop rod, which is nice because you're going to be under this hood a lot. There is a fuse box here, and then there is a cap to get to your positive connection for the jumper cable. So cool. So you put on your jumper cable, and then what you're really supposed to do is ground out the negative to the body. Your question is, where do you ground out to? And that's, especially when it's dark, was a problem I had. And I was looking all over, and because everything is just about covered in plastic, there really isn't an obvious place to ground. Okay, well, you can kind of deal with that. So you can ground out to the negative terminal on the battery. Well, here is the battery. It comes with this little rubber cover here, but it's also covered by this huge, I don't know what this thing is, but an inverter or something on top of it. And I'm not actually sure how you get the battery out when you want to change it, but you kind of have to pry this off, and you can see that I didn't put it back on because it's almost impossible to get back on once you get it off. But then there's the negative terminal, so you don't have a lot of room to get in on there. And like I said, sometimes I've had to disconnect this battery, and that is even more difficult. So you need like a, I think it's like an 8mm or 10mm socket with an extender, because you got to get past this thing to loosen up this nut, and that will kind of let the this clamp kind of loosen up so that you can get the cable off of the battery terminal, reset your head unit, put it back on, and tighten it down. But most people don't have the right lug and extension bar for a socket wrench, and so, you know, unless it happens to you in your house or at a workshop or in a garage, even disconnecting your battery can be pretty tough. And like I said, it's happened so frequently now, I've almost thought about getting one of those disconnect switches for like storing your exotic sports cars and things like that, where you can just kind of disconnect the power, the battery with a switch, because it gets really annoying. I'll you know, that happens to you once when it's -8 degrees out, and you're going to be ticked. So, all right, so I think the battery disconnect's done, but I do like the fact that you don't need a prop rod on the to open up the hood. The last thing I want to point out is ground clearance. So I think I looked up, the advertised ground clearance on this car is about 6+ inches. Now, let me tell you the story of my experience. This is only front wheel drive, but my friend has a GMC Acadia, which is kind of the next step up, but it's a bigger truck, but its ground clearance I think is about 7 inches. So they aren't a lot different, but we had parked right next to each other, and it snowed. It snowed about 6 inches or so, and I got my car stuck almost instantaneously, and he drove out without a problem through the snow and out of there. One of the reasons I think that happens is that the ground clearance may be 6 or 7 inches, but a lot of the hardware in the undercarriage hangs that low. You can see the muffler there kind of rides all the way across, whereas the Acadia I think has generally higher clearance, but maybe the differential dips to that level. But so what ended up happening is my car's undercarriage was really surfing on the top of the snow and getting stuck, where the Acadia really didn't have as much surface area connected with that snow, and so it drove through exactly the same snow with minimal measurement differential on clearance, but it had no problem, and this car had a problem. I would say that this would be, because of the passenger space and everything, would be a perfect car to have out in, you know, Colorado or up in the mountains, because you can get it in 4-wheel drive, great leg room, great capacity for towing in, etc., etc. But because of that clearance problem, even with 4-wheel drive, I would say you might have some problem in, you know, even pretty modestly deep snow. So those are the things I like and dislike on the car so far after 90 days. So I'm sure there will be more, but that's it for now. Peter von Panda out.